it seems a bit ironic that while most fan bases across the country are looking for that next hot commodity coach from an offensive standpoint, first and foremost, and who's going to be creative, who's the play caller that can take the talent we have and maximize what we can do. And this is the day and age of you got to score 50 points a game and throw for 400 yards, that this fan base, much of it, is looking for toughness, discipline, determination, defense.
You're right, and I think that's needed, Mark. I mean, I think where Oklahoma's at. I mean, and you hit the nail on the head. I think where Oklahoma would like to be with this hire is getting is securing a very tough, a very hard nosed, defensive minded head coach that has either some SEC ties or some inroads into the SEC area from a recruiting perspective. And then and then to your point, bringing in kind of a dynamic offensive coordinator to supplement that that toughness and on the and the from the defensive side of the ball, because we've talked about this on many occasions, Mark, about Oklahoma's maybe lack of toughness and softness that's happened over the last couple of years. And um, I think more importantly, Oklahoma's not been able to consistently play good defense really since Brent Venables had been here. And I think it's ironic that that's kind of back to where we're at. So yeah, I think that's exactly where Oklahoma people feel like they need to go with this hire, somebody that brings just kind of a renewed attitude and toughness within the program that's really have seemingly been lost, at least to a certain extent, over the last 5 years, just from a cultural perspective.
So we will be watching the Big 12 championship without Oklahoma. And the Big 12 championship came back so it started in 1996, and then it was interrupted after 2009 or 10 when Nebraska and Colorado left. 2009?
2009, yeah, into the 2008 season, 29. Yeah, I think so.
And then it returned in 2016?
Let's see. I think that's accurate. Yeah, I think that's right.
Whoever played that year is Oklahoma TCU the next year.
Yeah.
Can't remember 2016. Anyway, off the top of my head, I'm losing it. Regardless, so we've got a Big 12 championship game between Oklahoma State and Baylor. For the good of the Big 12, Big 12 fans should be rooting for Oklahoma State to be impressive, win that game, and leap Cincinnati into the Final Four. I know that's a difficult ask for Oklahoma fans, depending on your rooting approach, because this debate comes up from time to time, whether you're a fan of your team, screw everyone else, don't care, actually root against everyone in the conference because they're our rivals, so why would I root for them? Or those people that recognize their rivals and want to beat them in season, but then root for the conference to look good in bowl season, NCAA tournament times. So I don't know where you stand or the people that you talk to in regards to what would be the rooting interest or the disdain for Oklahoma State reaching a college football playoff.
It's a good question, Mark. I mean, haven't really put a ton of thought into that with everything else going on, this week. But I think, I think it's probably about 50-50. I think there's a lot of Oklahoma people that would like to see, just from a state of Oklahoma perspective and just from a Big 12 perspective, like to see Oklahoma State win this game and get an opportunity to make the playoffs and play likely a Georgia team. So but I think there's also the other half that would just, so much disdain for Oklahoma State, and would love to see them have probably one of the biggest games in their program history against Baylor on Saturday, and just to see them fall flat on their face. But no, I think it's. I mean, for me specifically, I think I would like to see Oklahoma State win the game, just to see, because I think the moniker has been around Oklahoma. Okay, Oklahoma gets to the playoffs and they're non-competitive. So, for me, just to see another Big 12 team make the playoffs and just see how they fare against, assuming Georgia beats Alabama, against who everybody says is you know head and shoulders above everybody else in the country. So I think that would be very intriguing to me, just to see how they stack up against. I mean, I think that they might be a little bit more equipped, defensively than Oklahoma has been in the past, to be able to play with Georgia a little bit. So I think, yeah, no, I think it'll be. I think a lot of people, winner. I mean, whether or not they care or not, one way or the other, I think a lot of people will be glued to watching that game on Saturday at 11.
Yeah, in many ways, it could be deemed as the most important of the championship games in a sense, because Oklahoma State seems to be the one team that, with a win, is on the fence, where Michigan's in, Georgia's in, Alabama's in, Wake Forest and Pitt are out, despite having an 11-2 record with a win that the committee may have to deal with elsewhere with Alabama, and or if things fall a certain way with a Baylor or Iowa or Oregon with an 11-2 record that would still be under consideration. I continue to root for chaos, and
Mm-hmm.
this weekend could either give us a very clear cut four, or it could be extremely chaotic. So we shall see. Martin, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. We appreciate it here at the Voice of College Football. Martin is asking, who on this list do you think is an elite recruiter or can put together an elite recruiting staff?
Yeah. So, but before I answer, I'm going to give Martin a big shout out. He has been on our post game shows pretty much consistently over the last. And actually, Martin is a former Oklahoma football player. He played under, I think, under the Gibbs regime in the mid to late '90s as well. So really, really good defensive lineman for Oklahoma, even though it was a dark period in Oklahoma football and football history. Martin has been with us. So, Martin, I appreciate the question and your involvement with this, with our shows here. But I think, what I don't know about Rule is just the recruiting side of it. I know that he built Temple up to be a really, really good team, where they were, in a traditional place where they have not, where it's more of a professional type of area in Philadelphia. So he built them up. Baylor, he was able to improve that very, very quickly, and then hasn't had a great beginning to Carolina, but obviously the recruiting side of that doesn't matter in the NFL. And then when you go to Venables, I think what you have heard from him is he is just an absolute dynamite recruiter on the defensive side of the ball, particularly what he's been able to do at Clemson as the defensive coordinator. So, I would probably, based on what I know, Martin, I would probably put Venables a little bit ahead of Rule, just from a recruiting perspective, on the defensive side of the ball, if not just kind of total on what he's been able to do for Clemson, and even what he was able to do at Oklahoma from a recruiting perspective when he was there.
So I was racking my brain because I have watched a ton of college football for years and years and years, and I've got a good memory. That's one thing that I've got going for me. So I looked him up in terms of Martin Chase, because I was thinking, do I legitimately remember that name? Martin, yes, thank you for your contribution there, and thank you for contributing every week just by being here and for participating in the shows. There's not a whole lot of people walking around that can say that they played in the NFL, and Martin jumped around from the Ravens, Saints, Redskins, Giants, and Jaguars for 7 years in the NFL, totaled 60 tackles, and played up front with Norman Hand. I remember that name. And Grady Jackson, I remember that name as well, after playing college football at the University of Oklahoma. Very nice. Well distinguished there, sir. 5th round draft pick to the Baltimore Ravens in the 1998 NFL draft. Very nice.
Yeah, no, he's been, like I said, he's been with us and interacting in our, in our post game shows lately. So appreciate having him on as well.
All right, everyone.
Yeah, and something to keep an eye on. Parker Thune, that actually works for. I was just kind of reading this that it covers OU for 247 has mentioned that there's potentially could be announcement today. And I don't. I mean, he's very reputable inside the Oklahoma circle, from a media outlet perspective. And he's mentioned Oklahoma hosts 14 ranked Florida in basketball tonight. So he's saying, from what he's kind of hearing internally, that there's going to be an announcement at the basketball game. It seems odd to me to announce a football hire at a basketball game, but he's more way more in tune than I am. So it's something, not reporting that that's necessarily going to happen, but just something to keep in the back of everybody's mind that could possibly be something that happens today.
Yeah, I'm trying to envision that. I'm also trying to remember if I've seen that before. I know that when Ohio State hired Jim Tressel, it was not announced at a basketball game, but then he attended the next basketball game and made a famous speech among the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry when he basically guaranteed a win that next season at Michigan at a time when Ohio State was losing. And obviously the reason John Cooper was fired was losing 10 out of 12 games to Michigan. All right. Anything else, Jason? We have, I want to remind everyone before Jason closes us down here that we've been on here a number of times throughout ever since the Lincoln Riley story broke. So if you want more insight and more perspective just on the Lincoln Riley tenure, what happened there, and then leading into this coaching search, we've got a ton of content here at the Voice of College Football on our Oklahoma channel that you can dive into if you have not done so. Do we expect an announcement if you had to wager a guess in the next 24 hours?
I would say I would give the odds maybe about 70-75%. I would say that within the next 24 hours. I think, if it's either one of these guys, I don't think there's any hesitancy in pulling the trigger if they feel strongly about one. It's not like they either have to wait for a conference championship game or have them finish the season or anything like that. Both of them are. And one thing I had kind of heard through the grapevine was that there was a potential maybe issue with the Carolina contract. I've heard that that's maybe not necessarily the case anymore. So I think Rule would be a guy that could possibly join in and start as quickly as he can. So I don't know, what that would look like. But yeah, no, I think a lot of people want to see it done. Fans and just people alike would like to see it done so they can, for no other reason, get started with some of these, with some of the recruiting stuff and just kind of get on the, get on the ground running. So I would hope and think that maybe within 24, 48 hours we see something.